Thanks for joining us. Today I'm going to be talking with Dan Gaze from Dan Gaze Support Service about his life, about prison, about working as assistant head in school, and about his work now with young people.
So thank you, Scott. So as Scott just said, I was a former young offender. I spent 18 months in the Young Offenders Institute from Wood Hill up until Onley. Time in my life that I regret, and so I learned a lot from. I'm on the motto that you can always find a positive from a negative, and as I tell my story, I hope that you see that. So in 2002, 24th of January, I was in Luton Crown Court and sentenced to 18 months for ABH. This was my first offence, and I was sentenced into Wood Hill that evening, which is a Cat A prison. A massive surprise for me to go into there and what was going on. That night I got to share a cell with a young person of the same age as me from Waltham Cross, who had been in for robbing vehicles and putting a handbrake on the motorway, if I remember rightly. Very strange situation, as the weekend before I was working the nightclubs and doing bodyguarding. With that point there, as I turned into Wood Hill and I went for a shower, there was probably about 4 or 5 young people at the time that I would thrown out of a nightclub. And I know you're probably thinking, how can he be a bouncer? Well, I started bouncing at 16 and a half, and I shouldn't have been at nightclubs and bodyguarding various sort of celebrities around the London area, around Uxbridge. I got in there, and these young people that were in there as well recognised me, and I'd thrown them out of a nightclub. To their credit, they didn't cause me any trouble, and they were very kind to me and sort of respected me, which was fine. Very difficult time being in there, especially in Wood Hill. Wood Hill was a 23-hour bang up a day, so you was locked in your cell. Yes, all right, you had a TV, but you know, it's not the life that you wanted to be in there. The only time you was allowed out was to go outside and to do some exercise, which most people just hung around smoking. I was probably in there for about a month, or probably about 3 weeks, and then I got shipped up north to rugby. I'd never even heard of rugby. For my geography lessons, I never really listened anyway, if I'm honest with you. I spent some time in Onley. I'm not ashamed to say the first time I got into the cell in Onley, I was told I was had to be on my own side of violent offence. I cried my eyes out. I think reality hit home of where my life had turned to and what had gone on. It was a difficult time. It was like an army boot camp in a strange way. You know, you'd have to fold your clothes up. If you didn't fold your clothes up, then they'd be thrown on the floor. You'll be screamed at by the screws, as the prison wardens, as they call them. They asked me one day, you know, one of the governors, what do you want to do? You know, what do you want to be, a naughty boy in here, or do you want to keep your head down? So I want to keep my head down in here. That's all I want to do, is want to go home. Obviously, I couldn't go home. The earliest I could go home was 7 months. Well, I didn't know that. Like I said, this was my first offence. I knew nothing about any sort of criminal system. They moved me onto a wing, which was quite a positive wing at times. A lot of young people on there, looking back, that was their life. They were in and out of that prison. I probably see one guy 3 times in the whole of the time I was in there. In my cell, you had your own cell. You was only really allowed to shower when you were told to shower, which was quite frustrating. You would eat what you were told to eat. You were told, this is when you can go out, this is when you can go to the gym. A very controlled situation. I spent my 19th birthday in there, which was quite difficult. At the time, I had a girlfriend who was very, very supportive of me at the time and wrote me letters every day, and lots of my friends. As much as I say lots of my friends, I probably had hundreds and thousands of friends at that point, and probably about 30 of them reached out, and some of them I'm really grateful and still my friends today. But with that and getting letters causes a lot of jealousy, and jealousy come from other inmates at that time, with them sort of calling out my name and trying to goad me into fights, into situations, which I didn't respond to, and I just wanted to get home. Inside prison, well, what's it like? Well, it's not the glorified camp that everyone makes out. You're alone. You have a lot of thinking time, and thinking time is dangerous. Also, a lot of people, demons come in, and I remember some situations I used to see people hanging from the ceiling by their bed sheets trying to end their lives. A lot of people cutting themselves with razor blades, trying to end their lives because they're worried about getting gate arrest or what's on the outside. Or like I said earlier, people coming in and out of prison because that's all they wanted to do. I realised when I was in prison that this really wasn't the lifestyle for me. As much as the glamorified bouncer lifestyle I had, you know, with girls around me and going to clubs and VIPs, it wasn't really for me. I tried to keep my head down as much as I could, even though there was some sort of situations in there where I had to stand up for myself. And I managed to get myself out on tag in August of that year of 2002 and just kept my head down. From that, I just wanted to change my life. So the one thing I wanted to do was help young people. As you could imagine, because of my criminal record, nobody would let me work with young people. So my friend offered me a job up in Uxbridge to go and work in his bar, which I did do to help him, and do some chef work, which I did do to keep my head down. And then I was given a great chance by Headington Council to do some youth work with some young offenders. And from there, I see the sky was the limit. I could be given a chance. I went and worked in a Peru in my hometown of Stevenage, which is a pupil referral unit for young people that sort of got kicked out of school or couldn't handle the mainstream situation. And then I was moved. I then see a job as a teaching assistant, and a lady who I worked with called Jenny, who was fantastic, at a school called Falconer School, which I applied for, which I never thought I'd get, and I did. And then from there, I just spent 12 and a half years there and see the sky being the limit and become an assistant head. People think, why am I doing this video today? Well, the important thing is, one, to talk about prison, but the other reason is to talk about that we can change our lives and we can make mistakes in our lives and move forward. And I think it's really positive that young people today know they can't keep going down that path, and they can move forward and they can make changes to their life.
Okay, Dan, could you tell us about your childhood?
Yeah, of course. Childhood, I think, sometimes has affected the path that I've gone down. I grew up without a father. My father didn't want anything to do with me. My nan told me he wanted my mum to get rid of me. Growing up in sort of the late 80s, the early 90s, there was no such thing as a father. I remember playing football and rugby at school, looking around, hoping that there would be like a dad figure on the side, or my dad watching me, and he never was there, but other people's dads was. Unfortunately, through my school wasn't very good, so I went to a junior school in Stevenage, and I was expelled from my junior school through various behaviours, and then I went to another junior school which I seemed to settle down. At that time, my mum was a single mum. I had my nan and granddad and my auntie as quite a support network at the time. I used to live in a flat in a place called St Nicholas, which is Ripon Road, and my mum didn't really have much money. She was a single mum. She always made sure I was fed, but she didn't have much money, which was quite difficult for her. She worked as a nurse. My mum lacks a lot of confidence, and nowadays I would say is very an anxious lady. She met a gentleman who now I have a brother with, she had a brother with, sorry, and we probably didn't see eye to eye, which obviously was a lot of change in my life at that time as well. I was 10 and my brother come along. Very difficult time actually. I was sort of shipped to my nan and granddad's, told to live there, while my mum moved in with her partner. Then they bought a house and I was allowed to move into the house with them. I was always told by him I wasn't his son, and when I was 16 I'd be kicked out, I'd be gone. There were situations I remember as a young person growing up in that house where he used to try and tell my mum I was a drug dealer because people used to come knocking at my house for me to go out. He would sort of like not put food in the fridge, so I didn't get to eat, and at times also as well would lock me out the house, leave me in freezing cold weather and dark nights or snowy nights outside without a key because I wasn't allowed a key. And also at a young age he punched me in the face, which brought in social services involvement. Being a young lad and easy influenced, my mum bought me a PlayStation 1 and said come back to the house, it's okay, and it was all sort of covered up, which was quite difficult. I then went to secondary school. I didn't get on quite well at secondary school, ended up getting expelled from there as well. You can see the pattern in my life as we're going here. I was just in trouble all the time, just for silly stuff, rude to teachers. My home life was sort of in turmoil at the time, and I was just really struggling as a young person. Later on in life, I found out I had dyslexia. At the time, no one knew, spoke to me about dyslexia. They just think I was a class clown and playing up. And later on in life, I've had to come to deal with that. So that was quite a situation that I had to deal with.
And so you worked in the nightclubs. How did you get into working the door?
Yeah, so I went boxing one time in Stevenage Boxing Club. At the time, I'll be honest with you, as a young boy and as a teenager, I was quite a wimpy kid. I was scared of things. I didn't like to fight. As much as I'd get myself into some scrapes, I wasn't tough. I wasn't involved in the gang life that was in Stevenage at the time. But I went boxing and a guy said, "Oh, mate, I need some doormen for tonight. Do you want to come and work?" So I ended up working in Stevenage in my hometown. I was 16 and a half on some of the clubs like Weatherspoons and the White Lion. It was an eye-opener. From there, met some other doormen and they offered me a job over in Kingston upon Thames. So we used to travel from Stevenage every Friday and Saturday to Kingston upon Thames, and then ended up in Uxbridge. When I worked in Uxbridge, I worked with a guy called Paul. He was a big guy, a very good friend at the time, looked up to him. And some of the other doormen that I worked with, being 16 and a half, 17, easy influenced. To the point I worked with people like Levi Belfield, who killed Millie Dowler, and a few other young ladies, which I didn't know about. And this was all around sort of 2000, 2002 time, just before I went to prison. It was a great lifestyle at the time. I used to love it. We'd walk into clubs and people would open up VIP, give us drink, in a strange way, sort of a mini celebrity lifestyle, even though we wasn't. You sort of have an entourage with you of people at the time, 3 or 4 or 5 different doormen, and you get put on a pedestal you should never have been on. Like, I should never have been on that pedestal, working over in London, throwing big men out of nightclubs at 16, half 17, on the way to 18, and not even being licensed.
So Dan, how did you end up in prison?
What I sort of touched upon, I was on a pedestal that I shouldn't have been on when I was in London. I was looking after various celebrities, UK garage acts, some of the grimy acts that are in now, looking after them, doing a bit of celebrity bodyguarding as well. I think in my mind, I thought I was something that I wasn't, and a bit of arrogance. I used to go out heavily drinking on a Wednesday evening in Stevenage. One time before I got the offence that I did, I got myself into a fight outside Tesco's over a girl, where 5 guys jumped me and I managed to get the better of all of them. The police arrested me that day, or that evening should I say, and the next morning let me out, sort of laughed to me and says, "You got the better of all 5 of them, you're not in trouble, don't worry about it," which is not the police officer's fault, but actually gave me that another little bit of edge that I'm untouchable. Again, the week after, went out a Wednesday evening in Stevenage, got drinking, arguing with an ex-girlfriend and the girlfriend at the time, walked through the town centre, talking to an ex-girlfriend, and two men approached me and sort of said, "You can't treat a woman like that." I was heavily intoxicated, so something I can't really remember. I told the guys to go away, probably in a different language than what we're using now, and then pushed them away. Another gentleman who I didn't know, with a Geordie accent, who actually went to prison with me in the end, come along and tried to make sure that I wasn't pushing them around. At that point there, one of the gentlemen who I pushed punched me and it turned into a fight. One of my friends joined me at that point to try and help me. Because at that time I knew how to box, I knocked the person out in the air and kept him up with my punches, and then begun to stamp on his face, which, looking back, obviously I could have killed the guy, and I'm grateful that that he didn't die, and I'm grateful that I'm still here. But it was a big eye opener to life and what it's about.
Okay, Dan. So you were working in the school. You rose to the level of assistant head. What was it that actually inspired you to want to work with young people?
I think, like I said when I come earlier on, when I come out of prison, I wanted just to help young people. I didn't want them to go through what I went through in my life, not just the prison, but the other situations as well. And I just think that every young person needs a role model or someone to support them. When I went into the school, I just wanted to go in and help young people change their lives change. And I remember some teachers used to be like, "Oh, they're just going to end up in prison, or they're just going to end up on a dole." And I used to I sort of argue with the teachers. I was very young at the time, saying, no, these boys can do well. These boys, because it was an all boys school, they just need support, and they need some support network around them to help them. And that's basically why I got into it.
So Dan, I know you've been involved in some charitable work as well, and obviously now set up Dan Gay's support service. So how did that come about? What did you actually do? And where do you see yourself over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of charity work. I set up the Amy Winehouse Foundation football team, which was raising a lot of money for the Amy Winehouse Foundation. We got to play against a great foundation called Celeb FC, who go around helping charities, sending celebrities to play football. And we also played against Tottenham Legends, which was fantastic. Both events were organised by myself. The reason I got into this, I met a guy called Simon, fantastic guy actually, who we were both just talking about our passion for football and charity work, and we just started playing football against each other, raising money for different charities, sometimes Great Ormond Street Hospital, sometimes the Amy Winehouse Foundation. Also done a lot of work for a Jewish charity over in Bushey from the Paul Norris, who's an OBE, was the mayor at the time of Bushey. A few other little bits and bobs with Arsenal as well, who we had a good relationship with in Bushey. The Josh Hanson Trust, who's a great charity about anti-knife crime, which is fantastic. And also myself, I put my gloves on to get into the boxing ring for cancer research in 2015, which was another great thing. Where do I see myself moving forward? Well, I left my job on the 31st of August 2020, which is this year, and I decided to set up my own little franchise business as a sole trader, Dan Gay Support Service. I decided that I wanted to help young people in so many different ways. So whether that be a mentor, be outreach, detached, doing talks like this, or just supporting them in schools, or just being around there just to be that listening ear and to be able to help young people, just guide them in the right direction. I'm a true believer that every behaviour is a form of communication from young people, and that they do just want us to help.
You recently got awarded Hotspur Hero from Tottenham, which must have been awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It gives me a bit of goosebumps when we talk about it. I mean, that was my boyhood club. I absolutely loved it. But there's loads of different reasons. I mean, when I did the report, I'm really grateful for everyone that I ever worked with, how grateful I am with the young people I worked with that, deserve a lot of that award as well, that taught me a lot. But also it was really nice. It's going to sound really stupid because the local papers got hold of it, and in 2002, as I told you, my name was splashed across the paper for the criminal offence that I had, and this time it was splashed over for a positive reason. It was really nice to be interviewed by Tottenham. It was really nice to be recognised. I want to thank my good friend Luke Killar for nominating me for this, and all the staff that I've ever worked with and pupils. I am really, really grateful, and I wish you well. And obviously Tottenham for recognising me. It was a great honour, and it feels fantastic.